Hey students, today we're going to be looking at the Sahara Desert. That's right, the Sahara Desert. Now we've talked a little bit about deserts this year already, but what is a desert? Well, there are actually two different types of deserts, and the Sahara Desert that is found in North Africa is actually the largest hot desert in the world. So the Sahara Desert is the largest hot desert. Hot desert. Now, a hot desert, okay, in this particular case, all right, is a desert that is dry. So these characteristics of a hot desert would be that it is dry, right? So we're talking about very little rainfall, right? And extreme temperatures. Okay, extreme temperatures, meaning that it could be very, very hot. And it could actually also get very, very cold. That's the one thing that's very interesting about hot deserts, is that they can also be very, very cold, right? And so there's not only extreme temperature, there's little rain, but this ultimately means that there's very sparse vegetation and sparse water. Okay, so essentially, right, in many of these parts of the desert, it's going to be very, very dry. It's going to be very, very hot. It's also going to have extremely low amounts of water. But ultimately, what this is going to make up is a very harsh environment. Okay, a very harsh environment. All right, and the Sahara is actually one of the harshest environments on the entire Earth, right? You would not want to get stuck there by yourself, okay? And it actually covers, and this is just so incredible, 3.6 million, you hear that? 3.6 million square miles, right? About 9.4 million square kilometers, and it's nearly a third of the African continent, right? So check this out, okay? When we look at the African continent here, okay, the Sahara Desert actually covers, right? The Sahara covers about 1/3 of the African continent. So it is huge. And not only does it cover about 1/3 of the African continent, but if you want to think about that relative in size, it's about the size of the entire United States. Isn't that crazy? About the size of the entire US. Just vast. And the name of the desert, the Sahara, actually comes from an Arabic word, which is Sahara. All right, and that actually means desert. Okay, can you say that? Sahara, which means desert. So you can see, right, just how vast, right? If you see on this map in particular, you see all of the goldish brownish color, right over here. That is all the Sahara Desert, which is just huge, right? So it covers so much of that, right? Spanning all the way from the Atlantic Ocean to the Red Sea right here, and the Mediterranean Sea, right? So much of this continent is covered by the Sahara Desert, okay? All right, well, so we know a little bit more about the Sahara Desert now. Let's talk a little bit more about the geography. Now, remember, I told you that it was a hot desert, right? And you might be saying, well, I thought maybe all deserts were hot. Well, I want to show you just really quickly two deserts called, which are actually cold deserts. And these cold deserts are actually much larger than the Sahara, and that is Antarctica and the Arctic. Okay, two cold deserts. In fact, the entire continent of Antarctica is a cold desert, and it is the largest cold desert, and the Arctic is the second largest cold desert. Now, The Sahara, though, even though it's not the largest desert in the world, it is the third largest desert, but the largest hot desert, okay, it covers so many miles, which we saw, remember, 1/3 of the African continent, okay? And there are lots of different portions of this Sahara Desert, right? Lots of different geographical features that we're going to talk about. But the first one that I want to talk to you about is this incredible geological feature called a salt pan. Everybody say salt pan. Now, a salt pan is a flat expanses of ground covered with salt and other minerals. And you can find this in the Sahara Desert, and you say, well, this is sort of weird. It looks like, it almost looks like snow or ice, but in fact, it is salt. And salt pans or salt flats, right? Another way of saying it, salt flats, okay, are made up of when water or lakes or ponds, basically. So a lake or a pond evaporates. Okay, so the water evaporates, and what's left are these little mineral deposits. So these really old lakes, right? The water from these lakes has dried up and evaporated up, and it's left these mineral deposits or these salt deposits, right? Another thing that you might see in the Sahara are these incredible joinings up of rock fragments and pebble. So these are rock fragments and pebbles, right, that are kind of cobble sized. So there's some big ones, there's some small ones, so they vary in size. And this is called desert pavement. Now, as New York City people, right, we know all about pavement. Well, in the Sahara, there's also pavement, but it's not man-made. This is natural pavement. So cool, right? So we have this natural pavement, these different rock fragments, right, that ultimately make these massive plains of rock. So it's not just all sand, it's not just all salt, right? You also have these rocks here as well. And so I think that's really interesting as well. Now, the other thing that I wanted to share with you, okay, about the geographical features that you might see is you might see something called a plateau. And this particular plateau that you're looking at is called the Inedi Plateau. The Inedi Plateau. And this is in the country of Chad, located in Chad. And this plateau, well, what is a plateau? You might be wondering. Well, a plateau essentially, okay, is basically an area that different weathering and erosion and winds and temperatures and whatnot have basically formed these rock features, this sandstone and these different types of rock, and created basically these plateaus. So if you actually see right here, sort of a flattening, basically the wind and water erosion, all these sorts of things have created these plateaus where they sort of level out over here. This picture is actually being taken when somebody's standing on a plateau, but then what they do is they also create these massive caverns and these massive canyons, right, over in here, which is really fascinating, right? So you see that it just creates these very intense, right, canyons. And then at the very bottom of this particular plateau is this beautiful, very important watering hole. And you can actually see a bunch of wild camels down here getting water, which is really fantastic. So the Inedi is actually a sandstone plateau. And it's actually being a part of a group of mountains. And so these plateaus are actually part of mountain ranges. And we're actually now going to talk about a mountain in particular here that I think is a really interesting mountain that is actually in the mountain range of I forgot. Oh no. Where is it? I forgot the name of this mountain. No. I'll find it. Hold on. Yes, it's the Tibesti Mountains. And the Tibesti Mountains, so this particular mountain is in the Tibesti, I couldn't remember that name, silly me, the Tibesti Mountain range. So even in this desert, you have such a range of different pieces of geographical features, right? And this is called Mount Kushi. Mount Kushi. And it is 3,000, let me draw a straighter line. This is 3,445 meters high. Whoa, that is crazy. So the elevation of that actually means that this top part, the elevation, is 11,302 feet, which is just huge, right? And the other thing that you'll also notice about this particular mountain, okay, is it looks like it has a crater in it. And you'd be right, okay? It does have a crater, okay? And the crater here, which is really, really interesting, okay, this crater here, all right, it stretches and spans so many miles. So not only very, very high, but it stretches really, really, really wide, right? Which is really fantastic, right? To think about this particular mountain, right? And so the thing that you need to think about Mount Kushi, right, is that it is a very different type of geographical feature, all right? And the other thing you need to know about it is it's also a volcano. That's right, it's a volcano. And Mount Kushi, as a volcano, and you know, you can actually go and look at different things that talk about this, or different images that talk about the Kushi or Mount Kushi. And when we think about its actual elevation, we think about its summit and all that sort of thing, we actually learn a lot about it, that it was a pyroclastic shield volcano. So this is a type of volcano, a shield volcano. And if I'm not mistaken, the crater actually goes about 4,000 feet down, which is just immense. So this is incredible. This shield volcano, that it's not an active volcano. There's evidence that says that it did erupt a long time ago, right? But the thing that I really want you to be thinking about is just how different of the geographical features here are in the Sahara Desert. Now let's talk about some animals. Oh yeah, we love talking about animals, right? I love the different animals that are a part of this particular geographical feature. Now, the first thing that you're looking at here, right, if you look from the left, starting here, is actually, this is an African mountain goat. Okay, and these mountain goats can be found high up in the Tibesti mountain range. You can find them really anywhere, which is really tremendous, right? So you can see all these really, really cool animals. Another one is a camel, right? And these are actually wild camels, right? You can see it pretty furry too, right? They can kind of go all over, right? And if I'm not mistaken, I actually see a little bit of snow on the fur of these camels. And that's because as you go up into the mountain areas, right, you can find really, really cold climates, okay, which is really a spectacular feature as well, okay? Now, the other thing, all right, or the other mountain that I found, animal that I found really interesting was this fox called the Finnick fox. Let me go. The Finnick fox. Oops, there we go. The Finnick fox. And also, right, and you can see this Finnick fox, he's kind of got some nice pointed ears so he can hear probably really well. He looks nimble and agile, right? And then another one is a monitor lizard, right? Probably on what we would call some of that gravel, right? And then another animal, a reptile, is the sand viper. Now, you guys know how much I do not like snakes. This sand viper looks like you would not want to meet him in the wild. These are definitely more deadly critters, right? Extremely venomous. You do not want that. Whatever that is over there, that rattler, we do not want to be a part of that, right? Okay, well, the other thing that I wanted to mention in the Sahara Desert, right, are these incredible people called the Berbers. Right? Now, this man right here is a Berber, and a Berber, okay, has Arabic roots, and these are nomadic people, right? Nomadic, right? They may move around depending on what, the Sahara's, what's happening in the Sahara, that sort of thing. They sort of travel from place to place, right? Which is what nomadic means. They have herds of sheep, goats, and camels, right? So they're farmers, but they're also herders. And there's about 2.5 million of these Berbers. 2.5 million people who actually call, well, there's actually not 2.5 million Berbers. That's actually not true. But there are 2.5 million people that call the Sahara Desert their home. And many of them are Berbers, okay? And here's some nice sheep. And you can even tell that they've got horns, which is funny, right? So when we think about these animals, when we think about these people that are in what is the Sahara Desert, right? There's just so much happening. Now, I didn't tell you this, but the last sort of geographical feature that I wanted to talk about really quick was these sand dunes, which you can see right over here in this picture. And these sand dunes can reach over about 600 feet, right? Can be 600 feet, which is just immense, right? And so I just wanted to share some of those areas with you. And I thought something really interesting about the Sahara Desert, that it actually, in many ways, actually, expands and contracts. It can shift depending on, the different seasons and that sort of thing. And so this is a very much so an active land, right? And I'm sure it changes. I bet even the Berbers could tell us that it probably changes a lot. But I just want you to see how vast it is, and especially to see so many of the really cool geographical features of it, okay? All right, there you go. That's just a little bit of an introduction to the Sahara Desert, which is going to be a part of our history lesson this week.